joining us so quickly after that break. I know it was just a stretch break, but we're trying to get back on track with time. So, welcome back. Please take your seat, ladies and gentlemen. It is a panel discussion that we're looking forward to. They're going to be talking about evolving trends in shopper marketing to the connected Indian consumer. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite all of you to come forward, take your seat as we welcome our panelists and our moderator on the stage. To moderate this session, ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Ajay Kelkar, co-founder and the COO of Hansa Cequity. Welcome on the stage, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on the stage Mr. Ajay Kelkar. He's going to join us shortly. He's getting mic'd up. And our three experienced panelists who will be joining him. Mr. Pearlraj Cannivady from SPAR Hypermarket. He's going to be joining us as well. Miss Beena Thomas from Godrej Consumer Products. And Mr. Manish Makhijani from HUL. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, the topic that they'll be covering in this discussion, evolving trends in shopper marketing to the connected Indian consumers. A loud round of applause as we welcome our moderator and our three panelists onto stage. Sir, all yours.
Am I audible behind? Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to be here. This is the first time I'm at this forum. I don't know the rest of you, but this is the first time I'm here. So looking forward to it. And we have the difficult job of presenting in 5 minutes, each of us. So I shall not delay and get started quickly. I anyway go very fast, so that actually works well for me. So I just want to give a little bit of a backdrop to what we are talking about. And I really liked Mr. Radhakrishnan's presentation last, and I think really the shift in the power between brands, channels, and customers is actually happening now. So if you look at it from a stage where brands would control and actually guide conversations, not have dialogue but have monologue, to a situation where you have you started having retail disruption, and retail started to command that conversation, and going on to finally today, which is really the era of the customer. And all of us as customers have that power, and we have the ability to be able to influence that. I think at the same time in retail, a lot of questions around new age companies disrupting, Amazon, a lot of disruptions around a whole range of retail business models, and all that is changing the way people think in the business. And yet I think for a lot of us, and we'll talk about it, who've been in this business for a long time, maybe that change is not so easy to come across or to start to execute in our own businesses. These new retail models also start to think very differently. So new age companies tend to, for example, be far more customer focused. Again, I was talking to Mr. Radhakrishnan that new age companies tend to look for feedback, ask for information far more easily than a lot of older companies. So a lot of that is happening. So really, from a shopper marketing perspective, the question that's important for us to get into is that shopper marketing and shopper consumer engagement has been around for the longest of time. And for some reason, it's been more on the tactical side and not as much on the longer term behavior change as it needs to be. And so how do you move shopper marketing from a paradigm where, yes, it will improve consumer experience, it will also help you sell better, but how does it start to solve some of the more longer term issues which consumers have?
Hellmann's boosts the flavor of many different dishes, but in Brazil, most people go only for sandwiches. That made us wonder, what if we could teach people new uses of Hellmann's while they were shopping for their next meal? At the largest Brazilian retailer, we presented the Hellmann's recipe card. An intelligent cooking card that recognizes the ingredients on the shelves and instantly suggests a new recipe with them. Special cards ingredients recognition, new quick recipe. As you pass by the vegetables, the cart reveals a new recipe with Hellmann's and those ingredients. Special cart, vegetables, fresh summer salad, and the same thing happens all over the place. Special cart, fresh fish, onion fish. With Hellmann's, the discovering experience is practically endless. And more, with our map, customers could find all ingredients they needed or share the recipes with their friends on the go. Everything people needed to like the experience.
Tive novas ideias para fazer os pratos com maionese.
Foi totalmente inesperado e novo.
Dá muitas ideias pra gente o que levar pra casa, o que fazer de almoço, de jantar, usando a Hellmann's, bem legal.
In only a few days, the experience was being nationally broadcasted. But not only that, the Hellmann's recipe card proved to be also effective. Only in the first month, over 45,000 people had experienced it. Thousands of recipes were sent, and most important, sales increased 68%. Good news for the brand and for the customers who could discover a new way to shop and use Hellmann's. If there is Hellmann's in your cart, there is a world of possibilities on your plate.
So the reason I showed this was that if you look at something like this, you're talking about a brand objective, a category objective, which is important, and you're using technology, using shopper marketing to drive that more critical objective. And look at this, again, the same brand doing it, and I'm going to just show you a snippet of that video, but doing the same thing in another interesting way.
Eu quero, Como é que ele deu pra mim? A minha cestinha com salpicão.
Muito bem.
Salada de macarrão. Cenourinha, alface, tomate e tudo de peru. Lasanha.
É exatamente essa receita aqui?
É os ingredientes que saem aqui.
Muito legal.
Muito!
Não tem nome dessa pra gente ter em casa? Bom?
Isso é igual Las Vegas, não é 1 milhão aqui.
So interesting concept again, and the point I'm continuing to make is that I think shopper marketing has a longer term habit change, behavior change objective, just like even giving a discount and getting sale is also equally important. The last thing I want to show you before I hand over to the other panelists is that while all of this is happening and shopper marketing is playing a role in trying to help consumers engage and buy more, what's also happening is the consumer expectations are dramatically shifting. And I just want to show you one snippet of what the millennial consumer expectation change is looking like.
This is my nephew, Yuan Yuan. He's 5 years old, super adorable. I asked him the other day, what would you like for your birthday this year? He said, I want to have a one-way mirror Spider-Man mask. I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. So I said, well, it's really cool, but how are you gonna get it? He told me, without a blink of his eyes, I'm gonna tell my mom, and make a wish before I go to bed. My mom will go to shake her mobile phone. The next morning, the delivery uncle will give it to me when I wake up.
So the point I was making was that at one side, there is context, there is consumer behavior change. The other side, there is this whole new reality of consumers and expectations of shaking the mobile and getting delivery the next morning. And it's in that context that we're going to talk about how do you really look at shopper marketing in the coming decades, and where do you take this whole space. At one side, you have technology, and yet the human touch, the ability to interact, is going to be so much more important. And all this talk of artificial intelligence and machine learning, the areas which are being touched upon now is that liberal arts is going to become more important as an education, simply because machines can't do that, right? And so therefore, despite technology, how important human touch is going to be. The other piece, of course, is the fact that consumers are beginning to think about replacement very, very differently. If Amazon Dash can automate replacement, then suddenly I'm topping up using technology, right? So these are some of the thoughts, and I would want to now invite my co-panelists to speak as well. I would like to invite Beena. Beena Thomas, General Manager Trade Promotions, Shopper Marketing and Insights at Godrej Consumer Products. She spent over 14 years in the business across multiple top consumer product companies, Marico, Colgate, Palmolive. All yours.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. Since we are really short on time, all of us are constrained by the 5-minute window. So I'm going to quickly get started, and I'm sure during the course of the discussion we can address examples, case studies, and any other questions you might have. So the first point was really, if you look at shopper marketers, and shopper marketing should really address the shopper across the entire path to purchase, right from when need is generated to when purchase happens, and to even post-purchase advocacy. To do this, we actually speak to the shopper at multiple touch points, be they pre-store, in-store, and post-store. Now, if you look at the traditional path to purchase, at least till recently what has been happening, a lot of the awareness, interest generation, consideration has all been built up prior to entering the store, and because the shopper has been exposed to a lot of passive stimuli in terms of outdoor marketing, or in terms of TV, radio, newspaper. So all of this has been passive stimuli that the consumer is exposed to, and happens either out of home or in home. And then what happens is when they go into the store is where the conversion actually happens. Now, with the advent of digital and omni-channel and all of that, this whole path to purchase has had a whole seismic shift, because now it's no longer as in-store, out-store. Lot of things, we still have the stimuli, which is the passive stimuli that the consumer is bombarded with, but there is also the active engagement that the consumer is doing. And that whole active engagement is something that what Google coined the term zero moment of truth, which essentially speaks to the fact that the consumer is actively seeking information, searching online, and doing all of that even before they have visited a store, or even before they have engaged with the product physically. So even this search can happen online, it can happen offline, and then final purchase also can happen both off and online. Second moment of truth is truly the point of where they are broadcasting finally the shopping experience. So now, as a brand, we are not just giving information, but we are also receiving a lot of information, be it criticism, be it advocacy. So that is also something that we need to be well aware of going ahead. So when I was looking at an interesting study or findings from a BCG report, and they did it in collaboration with Google, some interesting numbers that came up. It was very heartening for India. One was that internet usage in India, or internet penetration in India, has really doubled over the last 3 years. However, if you look at smartphone penetration, has almost gone up by 5 times in the same time period. So that why has that change happened in the case of smartphone penetration? One is clearly because data is now available a lot cheaper. Smartphones are available at a much more affordable rate. The other interesting fact was that even today, after all of this change that has happened, even today, only 20% of internet wielding consumers are actually doing purchase online. While when you compare that with, say, China, three people out of 5 internet users are actually purchasing online. For us, it is only 1 out of 5. So there's a tremendous room to grow for all of us, and this is a really heartening number to see. The other interesting thing is that a lot of people who are coming online today, in the next 3 years, 70% of them are going to be digitally native, which means that they would have been online for over 2 years. So they would be comfortable with the online interface, they would be interacting and engaging a lot more with the online interface. Also, some interesting cohorts that have come up in this report were that women are going to be a lot more significant in the time to come. New triers from the non-tier 1 cities, because now with the advent of digital, even brands that were never available to them using the physical stores are now available to them through online. So obviously digital has potential to become 2.5 times that they are currently today. So some of the expectations of shoppers have now changed drastically in this omni-channel space, because while they can interact in physical stores, they can even interact online. There is this cohesive, unified customer experience that they're still demanding from brands. So you cannot have something online and they have something totally discordant in the store. So that interaction has to be very clear and seamless. So some of the things in terms of changes in terms of the different platforms that shoppers interact with, platforms being physical stores, web, mobile and IoT. So the physical stores also have changed considerably and are going to continue to change, because currently physical stores are where we would go and buy our products. You might have been influenced either online, or you might have been influenced by some passive stimuli, and you'd go check out what is available online and then buy. But now, in today's time, the physical stores are taking on a different role as well. For instance, DMart Ready has recently come up with their online presence, where physical stores are only the fulfillment center, the pickup centers for the stock that they are giving out. The other thing is showrooming, which basically is doing a lot of research online, and they're coming to the store to get that touch and feel experience and going back online to finally make the purchase. The next thing is the web. The expectation from the web platform really now is to give them a lot more information about what they're seeking, to get a wider assortment that cannot be found in a physical store is now available online, and to give them the convenience. It's not always about getting the best value or the cheapest product, but now what is expected is convenience in terms of time, in terms of delivery, in terms of easy payment access. The next one really is about mobile. Mobile has literally become second skin for people. So that as a tool has become something that is probably the most potent amongst the different platforms for shoppers, because like I remember one of the speakers even earlier today spoke about, the moment you are looking at a product and it's something that's interesting to you, you go online, seek information about it, you might even decide to buy it immediately. And that's something that I think Sushmita mentioned is very popular amongst the millennials. The next thing is really the IoT, which is the whole interaction with Amazon Dash, the availability of information, even the Amazon Echo. You can do replenishment, you can do fulfillment at the touch of a button, or rather it's all voice controlled, but you don't need to do anything, it becomes a lot easier. So some of the advantages that now the digitally connected shopper has is literally immediacy, transparency and convenience. I'll not get into the details right now, but because these are some things that we are aware of. And some interesting opportunity areas. While I won't get into the details of these opportunities, we could probably address them during the course of the discussion. But one thing that we need to understand is when we're talking to shoppers, we need to be able to segment them. With the digital interface, we now have a lot more information about our shoppers. We can start segmenting them either. This is just one way of segmenting non-users, occasional users, and frequent users. But I guess the segmentation would differ from categories, segmentation would differ with brands as well. And there is the few inherent challenges with this evolution. One is that because we are actually speaking to different consumer sets, also while we are talking to different mediums and different platforms, the cohesive and the continued message that we want to give needs to be very cohesive for the shopper, and end shopper consumer is eventually the same. But the teams that work on this, be the brand marketing team or the digital team or the e-commerce team, are totally different. So that collaboration is needed before we can actually get the best out of it. That's it.
Thanks, Beena. I would like to invite now Pearlraj. Pearlraj is VP Marketing at SPAR Hypermarket. He spent over 17, 18 years, right, in retail across multiple retailers, Reliance, Future. Pearlraj, all yours.
Am I audible?
Sorry, everyone has to rush through the...
I know, I'm so sorry.
Hello?
Just take the mic.
Hello? I'll use this. Hello? Yeah, super, great. All right, so I have a very simple proposition and we're going to spend maybe another 15-20 seconds just having a quick conversation, okay? Obviously, we can't look at the future without taking a look at what's happened in the past. So I'd like each one of you to take the next 5-10 seconds to think about your experience with this guy, all right? And for those of you who are not from this country, think about the small stores that you have back at home. And these are stores that we grew up walking into, talking to. And each of these stores has a set of experiences associated with them. Good, bad, it could be a whole lot of everything. But a couple of things stand out. One is that guy at the back, when I was a kid, knew me. He knew my family, he knew what I ate, he knew when I was asking for something that he didn't have, he knew all of that. And in 5 seconds that I went to his store, I could see everything that was there. 5 seconds. If there was something new, I could spot it and I'd ask for it. Okay? There's a lot of debate which could happen on whether the experience was good or bad, we don't know. But I'd like you to put all your good and bad experiences into 2 buckets and hold on to them, okay? Because we'll get back to that sooner. Now I'd like you to take you to this place, and any prizes for guessing which city this is? Anybody, any guess which city this is? Bombay, Delhi, Kolkata, Chennai? Actually, it could be pretty much anywhere, because at peak time, all the cities look like this. Agree? Anybody here who loves the traffic in Bombay? Please raise your hands and risk getting killed by the people around you. All right? But what's the more interesting part of the story is the people who are sitting inside of these vehicles, these cars, these auto rickshaws, the buses. What's their life about? Because at the end of the day, they are the shopper, right? So who is this person? And cities today, as we know them, are diverse, okay? They're big economic hubs. There's people coming in from different parts of the country. They're much more diverse than they used to be, okay? Which means they're busier. People don't have time. They're stressed out, okay? But at the same time, as we saw in Sushmita's presentation this morning, they want to be better. They want to do more. They have aspirations. They have things they want to look forward to, all right? And this leads us into the 7 key desires that every urban shopper has. And if you look at them, they're very simple. There's the roti kapda makan. So for those of you who don't understand Hindi, there's food, clothing and shelter. And then there's the rest of the stuff which really comes into what people aspire for. Everything that's part of being connected. But how does all of this fit into where we need to go? And what does this mean really for trends in shopper marketing? So here's the first one that I can think of. Experiential. Now that's a word we just cannot avoid. And experiential can mean a whole lot of things, you know. If you want to talk about experiential being equal to technology, it could mean that. If you're talking about experiential being product shopper interaction, it could mean that. So here's something that we did at SPAR. What you see in front of you is something called the SPAR Studio, okay? And this is a digital touchscreen kiosk which is near our home section, which sells bed sheets and curtains and all of that. And we had a problem, and we used to get a whole lot of returns back, okay? Because people just couldn't mix and match. When they took stuff home, they realized it didn't fit together, and they ended up returning a whole lot of stuff. So we created this, and what it enabled customers to do is check out things right there, right then. Okay, try it out, look and feel. Create something just for them and share it with their friends. Returns went down and the adoption was fantastic, all right? But this is just one example. The core idea that I'm talking about here is building experiences and building onto the value of experiences inside the store. That's what's going to make the difference, and we can't avoid it. The second thing that I'm going to talk about is that shoppers are really everywhere, right? Shoppers are in the stores, they're online, they're on social, they're on digital, they're in every imaginable place. Therefore, shopper marketing needs to be there as well, okay? And we are seeing this in different places in different forms, in technology, in non-technology. So I want to share with you 2 things that we've done. We said that if customers can't come to the store will go to the customers. So we took a simple idea. We took a truck. Every morning, 6:30, it gets filled up with fresh fruits, vegetables, and goes out on a run to pre-designated areas. So customers actually wait in their apartments for our truck to come in with fruits, vegetables, pick of the day. Okay, simple idea, makes a lot of sense. And then, on the other hand, we leveraged technology. We set up a kiosk in one of the most densely populated corporate parks in Bangalore. It's called the Manyata Tech Park. And what you can do with this kiosk is, of course, cater to the 80,000-90,000 people who come and work there. So they come in at different times of the day, depending on what time zone they are servicing, and basically punch in their order, and their stuff gets delivered to them either there or at their homes, if you like. What I'm trying to say is that if shoppers are in multiple places and they're everywhere, we can't avoid it, all right? We need to be there. So that's the second trend that I'm seeing. All right. It's on? Okay. And finally, something that's close to my heart, which is emotional. Now, emotional not from the point of view of just being emotional for emotional sake, but brands and stores need to make an emotional connect with consumers. Let me take how many of you have kids over here who love Nutella? All right. So you remember the campaign of Nutella where Nutella printed the names of the children on the bottles. Well, my son loved it, and he insisted that we get 4 bottles. That's an emotional connect, all right? But that's something that brands do to touch your heart. But what we saw in the morning, as Sushmita was explaining, is that consumers also want to trust brands. They want to connect with brands. They want to know that they're doing the right thing. And that's something that I think all brands need to do. And here's something we did with a body called the SOS Children's Villages in December. So just a quick note over here. SOS Children's Villages has about 7,200 kids across their homes across the country. And what we ended up doing is we asked customers to gift one gift for each of these 7,200 children. To be honest, it was a risk because we didn't know how customers would react. But here's what happened.
This season of joy, join SPAR in fulfilling Christmas wishes of children at SOS Children's Villages of India. In a unique effort, every SPAR store across India will be collecting a gift each for 7,200 children at SOS villages from across Chennai to Srinagar. SOS Children's Village is a 53-year-old organization with a unique and globally successful concept of dedicated foster mothers raising once parentless and abandoned children as part of secure communities where nutrition, education, holistic development and emotional well-being are enabled. Here's what these children are learning about Christmas this year.
Christmas is the festival of togetherness and joy. And you give gifts to each other, you share meals, share your feelings with your family members, with your friends, you go out with them. It's a very happy time.
And like all children, they too have a wish for Christmas.
I want a red lunchbox for Christmas. I want geometry box. When I went to school, I will use. मुझे फुटबॉल चाहिए खेलने के लिए.
This Christmas, join us in sharing the season of...
So that's it. Here are what I think are the top 3 trends. I'm saying we need to be experiential, we need to be everywhere, and we need to be emotional. Just as a quick wrap up, customers responded brilliantly to that campaign. They gave the kids close to 16,000, 17,000 gifts. So each of them had more than 2 gifts to take home. Thank you.
Thanks, Pearl. I would like to invite Manish Makhijani now. I know we are short of time. Manish heads Consumer and Marketing Insights for South Asia for Unilever. All yours.
Thank you. Is my mic working? Am I audible? Okay, good. Thank you. Right, so in all this conversation about artificial intelligence and data everywhere and super smart internet, etc., I think we sometimes forget one simple truth, that shoppers are still human beings. For human beings, our cognitive evolution happened about 70,000 years ago, which happened after hundreds and millions of years of physical evolution. And with all of that, with just 20 years of digital evolution, human beings are not going to become super smart computers who can process information and understand what's going around with them at a speed faster than what we were doing yesterday. And I think that has profound implications on shopper marketing and what we do. And I intend to bring that to life with a couple of examples in this presentation. When I'm standing at a stage like this, and when I look at all the audiences, it is impossible for my human brain to register each and every face in the audiences. What my vision is likely to go to is the flash of the camera, because that's sort of attracting attention. Or 1 or 2 things which are, if somebody suddenly moves or gets up, is what my vision will go to. So our human brains, in other words, finds it extremely difficult to process so much of visual information at the same time. Imagine what happens, therefore, when you go to a retail environment. This is how a modern trade outlet looks like. Now, if you're looking for your brand, or if you're looking for what you want to buy, good luck trying to find that. But our brain has a way to sort of understand how do I go about that, or in a general trade environment for that matter. If you're looking for soaps, for instance, and the first soap that comes to your mind is Lifebuoy, you would remember that Lifebuoy is red, and you start looking for where is the red patch, maybe Lifebuoy is there, and you straightway go there. You'll ignore everything else around you. So our brains have therefore evolved to deselect first before we select something. Let me give you, a simple example there. On the next slide, you will get 3 seconds to notice a heart. And let's see how many of you can notice that. Did you see a heart? Okay. Now, some of you did manage to see the heart in the last 3 seconds. But how many of them saw green diamonds? Yeah, a fewer of you. Now what happens is that green diamonds are actually quite next to the heart. But your eye goes straight to the heart because that's what you're looking for, and you ignore everything else around you. So what that means is that, that's an ingrained behavior in us as human beings. We only go for what we're looking for and we deselect everything else because the brains have evolved to work in sort of a system 1, system 2 fashion, which you would have heard. System 1 is a sort of a part of the brain. These are not physical compartmentalizations, but this is a way of thinking, so to speak. System 1 is a part of the brain which sort of works in an autopilot. It does not think, it does things automatically. Like if you're driving a car, for example, on a road that you're comfortable with, you don't think about how you're driving. You drive, you chat, you listen to music. System 2 is where you need to put more effort and think about that. Now, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, most of the shopping happens in the System 1 mode. It happens automatically. You know what you're going to buy, you know where you're going to go, you know the aisles that you look for. And therefore, the inbuilt heuristics and the inbuilt thumb rules that we've developed for ourselves, are the ones that come into play. And all other efforts that we as shopper marketeers or marketeers do have to put an extra effort to stand out and break that thumb rule that she's following. Which is what I mean by that, we deselect first before we select. So if I'm looking for a Lifebuoy soap, I ignore everything else and just go for Lifebuoy. So I've deselected everything else first. And that obviously, you therefore look for what's relevant to you and what you plan to do. Another example is that if you look at something like this, can you identify what the product is? You can identify that it's a Dove soap, even though it's not very clear, because in your brain, you've got certain associations and image of Dove soap. And even if it's not clear, you can make it out. And you can make out very clearly that it's a Coke can without actually the name being very, very clear. Now what that means is that when you're walking into the shop, if you want to buy coffee, and if Nescafe, for example, instant coffee, Nescafe is the first thing that comes to your mind. Chances are you look for Nescafe, where is Nescafe? And you figure that that's the aisle which has Nescafe. You'll go to that aisle. You may pick up another coffee brand, but Nescafe is sort of a symbol in your mind. Or Coca-Cola is the fact that it stands for soft drinks, and you go to that aisle and buy whatever soft drinks you want. So you've got those symbols and images in your mind, and you only chase that and ignore everything else. Has therefore huge implications on what you do and how you make shoppers navigate the path. The other simple thumb rule that we follow as human beings is that we see what we expect to see around us. If I'm expecting things to be in a certain way, I only see that, and I don't see what I'm not expecting. This is one simple example, and this sort of proves that our brain does not work the way we intuitively think it does. It actually works quite differently. So in this sentence, you don't realize that the has been written twice, unless you sort of say that it's been written twice, because your brain ignores the second the automatically, simply because you don't expect to see it there. And that has implications again on the kind of packaging that you do. Very, very famous case study, from about a decade ago now, where Tropicana made a disastrous mistake of changing their pack design. Though the pack structure was very, very similar, the graphics changed dramatically. And people were looking for, the orange shot and the Tropicana written that way, which had changed completely. And they just couldn't find it on the shelf. And the sales dropped, drastically for them, and they had to go back because people weren't expecting to see the Tropicana pack in the way it was. So small evolutions in pack designs are more important and necessary rather than a complete revolution in pack sizes. The other interesting thing is that, the scarcity syndrome, which again is a very human sort of a way to behave. This was a very, very interesting experiment. Some of you would have seen it. What happened in this case was that in the first case, there was no limit. In a canned soup, there was no limit on how many canned soups you could buy, and people tended to buy 2 or 3 packs. But when we put a limit saying you cannot buy more than 4, there is a limit. One customer cannot buy more than 4. People tended to buy 3 or 4 rather than 1 or 2. So the average number went up. And when the limit was increased to 12, saying a customer cannot buy more than 12, the number of packs that people bought went up, and it was closer to 7, 8 in terms of average. So just the scarcity, because people thought that, I can't buy more than 12, so I must buy 12 now, otherwise I'm going to not be allowed to buy it anymore. And that scarcity syndrome made people buy more. So these are some of the tricks that you can do to sort of tap into the human heuristics. So the point that I'm making is that Shoppers are human beings. Let's treat them that way. Let's understand the heuristics and the biases and the beautiful limitations that we have as human beings and work with that as shopper marketeers. Chances are we'll be far more successful. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Manish. So I think in the interest of time, we have only about 5 odd minutes to have a discussion, and then we would open it out for questions. So I would just want to ask you one question. We have about 400 million consumers who are now online. Research says that maybe in the next few years, it could be 600 million or so. How is digital going to impact this shopper marketing? The consumers are making up their minds before they walk into stores. Beena, you want to go with that?
Yeah, I agree with you that a lot of the decision making has probably happened even before they have gone into the store. So, in fact, in line with what Manish has been saying, is that the store has to make it simpler for a consumer or a shopper to shop, because if that decision making has already happened, one of the things is to be done is to help them deselect. So help in that search process, put navigation signs
So
wherever.
solutions for that.
Looking for solutions to help them make that shopping process much easier so that they continue to transact even in physical stores. While it's going to happen that a lot of things are going to even move online, there will still be a need for being present
So
in
the
a
blend
physical
is
store.
important, and you should bring in solutions as much as you could.
True,
Manish?
Yeah, so I think that in India, the general trade is not going to go away in a hurry. Even if we have 1 billion consumers on the internet shopping, general trade will still be there. The question is that the role the general trade plays will probably evolve, and be different from today. So consumers do an interesting mix of online and offline. Doing research online or experimenting with the products offline, touch and feel, etc. is important. And they may again go and buy online depending on the deals that are being offered. So it's a mix that coming in, and I don't think the general trade or the physical store is going to go away in a hurry.
Pearl, are there changes in terms of the segment that you cater to? Are you seeing some categories more influenced by digital and therefore the impact is far more?
Well, to be honest, I have a different point of view. I don't believe that digital and offline are, watertight compartments any longer. In many cases, what we are seeing is that digital walks into the store. What I mean by that is you have digital presence inside the store. It's utilization of digital technologies inside the store. And also, it's about taking the store out to consumers. So that's what I was talking about when I was talking about being everywhere. We normally, our brains are programmed to think in an either-or manner. But what we are seeing happening is that there's a lot of handshake and a collaboration happening between technology and the real store. And that's what, in fact, Radha was also mentioning it earlier today. That's really what this is about, being truly omni. Running your stores, but being everywhere that the consumer shopper is.
Interesting. Okay, so I think we'll have to call a halt to our discussion, which is, thankfully we've all presented. So any last comments from each of you? Beena, starting from you, any final comments? Anything you would like to touch upon?
I think what is it important to know that whatever you're doing to the shopper, we have to be able to have a seamless communication both between online, offline. Like you said, it has to be a cohesive, continuous experience to the consumer, because for them, while these are all different channels and mediums, they are only mediums end of the day. End of the day, it's the same product they're looking at, whether it's online or offline. And it is the experience that has to be, touching that shopper enough for them to be loyal to you on your next purchase.
So I think that experience is something that two of you have spoken about as well, which is an absolutely important thing. I would only like to emphasize that the experience depends on what the shopping mission is. So if I am doing a monthly purchase for groceries, for example, versus I'm doing a top-up, the experience that I'm expecting is very, very different. And therefore, experience has to be tailor-made according to the shopper mission, and don't necessarily offer the full-blown, wonderful experience every time people walk into a physical or a digital store. So it has to be sensitive to what customers are looking for.
Well, I kind of agree with a lot of things that I saw in Manish's presentation, which is that shoppers are first human beings, which means they are really a complex set of IQ and EQ. We can't be addressing just one set of that equation, Because if we don't do it, we'll not get the CQ, which is the customer quotient. So it's got to be a combination of both things.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the close of the panel discussion, we've gone over time, but it has been exciting. We want to welcome on the stage Miss Sushmita Balasubramaniam, who's now going to take us through the questions that she's chosen from the audience. So we've received quite a few questions. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on the stage Miss Sushmita Balasubramaniam from Kantar.
Yeah, I think since we are cutting into lunchtime, I've been told that I must, go straight to the questions. Okay, the first question is from Hariom Mishra. How to identify managerial challenges to achieve new win-win-win solutions among shoppers, manufacturers, and retailers in shopper marketing?
So the whole partner ecosystem, and any one of you would like to take that?
You mind repeating that again?
Yeah. How do you identify managerial challenges for achieving new win-win-win solutions among shoppers, manufacturers, and retailers in shopper marketing?
I think, if I may start, I think it all starts from what your customers or consumers want at the end of the day. And if everybody is focused around what the consumer wants, the end delivery is, then the in-between sort of a retailer, etc., and the manufacturer can align themselves into what's the best experience, what's the best need, how the best, the need of the customer can be serviced best. And I think that's a big challenge. Often the conversation is a lot more about internal complexity, supply chain complexity, etc. But if you put customer at the center, consumer at the center, things can be aligned, and that is indeed one of the biggest managerial challenges.
I kind of agree to that. I think it is about finding a common ground. So normally what happens is that each stakeholder has his own objectives that he or he's chasing. But if this objective can in some manner dovetail and become one objective where everybody is talking about the same goal, I think that's when things start to happen and things start to give results.
I think one of the points I would like to add is that now with a lot of retail especially, with so much data being there, I think a lot of brands would like to partner the retailers to understand that data that much better. And I think Walmart and Procter & Gamble in quite a few years back actually led that partnership, the whole efficient consumer response where P&G could actually manage the stock in the Walmart stores. Yeah. And I just wonder whether that bargaining power which is shifting towards the customer now is going to help accelerate this trend. My own sense is that it probably will. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is from Arunima Das. What do you have to say for the shift in minds of Indian customers for every tier cities, which is I think the various tier cities?
Well, our experience has been that, it's got more to do with mindset than definition of a city by tier. So if you go to smaller towns, and I'll just take a couple of examples here. If you would go to Mangalore or Coimbatore, one would expect them to be less aspirational, have less of a demand for everything that is globally, acceptable and have those quality standards. But the reality is far from it. These consumers are very, very well exposed. They're very well aware. In fact, in many cases, I find health consciousness very high in Coimbatore. People are very health conscious. So I think it's a fallacy. I think that's, it's up to us to kind of redraw that map and rethink about how we approach so-called tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 cities.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, like you had mentioned, tier 1, tier 2, I think is just a geographical classification. If you look at mindset, just like you mentioned, the mindsets are still the same, the aspirations are still the same. It's just that the accessibility was much higher in the case of, say, metros in tier 1 cities. Now with the advent of digital, it is just that the tier 2 and tier 3 cities are now having access to brands and access to things that they never had access to before. So while that appears to be growing much faster, it was always a nascent need that was always there with that shopper.
That sort of sets the context for the next question actually by Shomdat Sarkar. While most of the digital engagement accounts for a tier 1 consumer, do these also hold true for delighting a tier 2, tier 3 Indian consumer? First, would you agree? And
I think it's sort of similar to what we said, which is that it's not a function of tier 2, tier 1 cities, it's a function of mindset. Here is an interesting piece of information. There is an e-tailer which allows you to order the designer shoes from outside of India, from European markets or America, etc. The biggest orders that this e-tailer gets is not from the top, 8 or 10 metros of India, but they get it from smaller towns, tier 2, tier 3 cities. So women in those cities are ordering Jimmy Choo shoes, sitting in their little town and wearing them. So it's not about a geographical, tier at all. It's much more about mindset, accessibility, which internet is offering you now.
does that answer your question, Somdat? Where are you? Okay. So
And now for the winner. Which question do you choose?
This is a tough one.
Which one? How did you? So the first one, right? The first one. Yeah.
The first one.
The first.
The first question, and we congratulate.
Hariom Mishra.
Congratulations to, can we please have the name again?
Hariom Mishra.
Congratulations. Please join us, Ms. Balasubramaniam, for the snap as well. We'd like to say thank you to our panelists, Mr. Pearlraj Cannivady, Ms. Beena Thomas, Mr. Manish Makhijani. Please put your hands together for our moderator of this session, Mr. Ajay Kelkar.